Exhortation to the Heathen by Clement of Alexandria. Explore not then too curiously the shrines of impiety, or the mouths of caverns full of monstrosity, or the Thesprotian cauldron, or the Syrian tripod, or the Dodonian copper. The Gerandrian, once regarded sacred in the midst of desert sands, and the oracle there gone to decay with the oak itself, consigned to the region of antiquated fables. The fountain of Castalia is silent, and the other fountain of Colophon, and in like manner all the rest of the springs of divination are dead and stripped of their vain glory, although at a late date are shown with their fabulous legends to have run dry. Recount to us also the useless oracles of that other kind of divination, or rather madness, the Clarion, the Pythian, the Didymean, that of Amphiaraus, of Apollo, of Amphilochus, and if you will, couple with them the expounders of prodigies, the augurs, and the interpreters of dreams, and bring and place beside the Pythian those that divine by flour, and those that divine by barley, and the ventriloquists still held in honor by many. Let the secret shrines of the Egyptians and the necromancies of the Etruscans be consigned to darkness. Insane devices truly are they all of unbelieving men. Goats, too, have been confederates in this art of soothsaying, trained to divination, and crows taught by men to give oracular responses to men. And what if I go over the mysteries? I will not divulge them in mockery, as they say Alcibiades did, but I will expose right well by the word of truth the sorcery hidden in them. And those so-called gods of yours, whose are the mystic rites, I shall display, as it were, on the stage of life to the spectators of truth. The Bacchanals hold their orgies in honor of the frenzied Dionysus, celebrating their sacred frenzy by the eating of raw flesh, and go through the distribution of the parts of butchered victims, crowned with snakes, shrieking out the name of that Eva by whom error came into the world. The symbol of the Bacchic orgies is a consecrated serpent. Moreover, according to the strict interpretation of the Hebrew term, the name Hevia, aspirated, signifies a female serpent. Demeter and Proserpine have become the heroines of a mystic drama, and their wanderings and seizure and grief Eleusis celebrates by torchlight processions. I think that the derivation of orgies and mysteries ought to be traced, the former to the wrath, orgy, of Demeter against Zeus, the latter to the nefarious wickedness, musos, relating to Dionysus. But if from Maius of Attica, who Polydorus says was killed in hunting, no matter, I don't grudge your mysteries the glory of funeral honors. You may understand Mysteria in another way, as Mytheria, hunting fables, the letters of the two words being interchanged. For certainly fables of this sort hunt after the most barbarous of the Thracians, the most senseless of the Phrygians, and the superstitious among the Greeks. Perish, then, the man who was the author of this imposture among men, be he Dardanus, who taught the mysteries of the mother of the gods, or Aetion, who instituted the orgies and mysteries of the Samothracians, or that Phrygian Midas who, having learned the cunning imposture from Odrysus, communicated it to his subjects, for I will never be persuaded by that Cyprian islander Cinyras, who dared to bring forth from night to the light of day the lewd orgies of Aphrodite in his eagerness to deify a strumpet of his own country. Others say that Melampus, the son of Amythaon, imported the festivals of Ceres from Egypt into Greece, celebrating her grief in song. These I would instance as the prime authors of evil, the parents of impious fables and of deadly superstition, who sowed in human life that seed of evil and ruin, the mysteries. And now, for it is time, I will prove their orgies to be full of imposture and quackery. And if you have been initiated, you will laugh all the more at these fables of yours, which have been held in honor. I publish without reserve what has been involved in secrecy, not ashamed to tell what you are not ashamed to worship. There is then the foam-born and cypress-born, the darling of Cinyras, I mean Aphrodite, lover of the Virilia, because sprung from them, even from those of Uranus, that were cut off, those lustful members that after being cut off offered violence to the waves. Of members so lewd a worthy fruit, Aphrodite is born. In the rites which celebrate this enjoyment of the sea as a symbol of her birth, a lump of salt and the phallus are handed to those who are initiated into the art of uncleanness, and those initiated bring a piece of money to her, as a courtesan's paramours do to her. Then there are the mysteries of Demeter, and Zeus's wanton embraces of his mother, and the wrath of Demeter. I know not what for the future I shall call her mother or wife, on which account it is that she is called Brimo, as is said. Also the entreaties of Zeus, and the drink of gall, the plucking out of the hearts of sacrifices, and deeds that we dare not name. Such rites the Phrygians perform in honor of Attis and Cybele and the Corybantes. And the story goes that Zeus, having torn away the orchites of a ram, brought them out and cast them at the breasts of Demeter, paying thus a fraudulent penalty for his violent embrace, pretending to have cut out his own. The symbols of initiation into these rites, when set before you in a vacant hour, I know will excite your laughter, although on account of the exposure by no means inclined to laugh. I have eaten out of the drum, I have drunk out of the cymbal, I have carried the kernos, I have slipped into the bedroom. Are not these tokens a disgrace? Are not the mysteries absurdity? What if I add the rest? Demeter becomes a mother, Kor is reared up to womanhood, and in course of time, he who begot her, this same Zeus, has intercourse with his own daughter Pherephata, after Ceres, the mother, forgetting his former abominable wickedness. Zeus is both the father and the seducer of Kor, and shamefully courts her in the shape of a dragon. His identity, however, was discovered. The token of the Sabasian mysteries to the initiated is the deity gliding over the breast, the deity being this serpent crawling over the breasts of the initiated. Proof, surely this, of the unbridled lust of Zeus. Pherephata has a child, though, to be sure, in the form of a bull, as an idolatrous poet says, "The bull, the dragon's father, and the father of the bull, the dragon. On a hill, the herdsman's hidden ox goad," alluding, as I believe, under the name of the herdsman's ox goad, to the reed wielded by bacchanals. Do you wish me to go into the story of Persephata's gathering of flowers, her basket, and her seizure by Pluto, Idoneus, and the rent in the earth and the swine of Eubuleus that were swallowed up with the two goddesses? For which reason, in the Thesmophoria, speaking the Megaric tongue, they thrust out swine. This mythological story the women celebrate variously in different cities in the festivals called Thesmophoria and Syrophoria, dramatizing in many forms the rape of Pherephata or Persephata, Proserpine. The mysteries of Dionysus are wholly inhuman, for while still a child, and the curette danced around his cradle clashing their weapons, and the Titans having come upon them by stealth, and having beguiled him with childish toys, these very Titans tore him limb from limb when but a child. As the bard of this mystery, the Thracian Orpheus, says, "Cone and spinning top, and limb-moving rattles, and fair golden apples from the clear-toned Hesperides, and the useless symbols of this mystic rite it will not be useless to exhibit for condemnation. These are dice, ball, hoop, apples, top, looking-glass, tuft of wool." Athenae, Minerva, to resume our account, having abstracted the heart of Dionysus, was called Pallas, from the vibrating of the heart, and the Titans, who had torn him limb from limb, setting a cauldron on a tripod and throwing into it the members of Dionysus, first boiled them down, and then fixing them on spits, held them over the fire. But Zeus, having appeared since he was a god, having speedily perceived the savour of the pieces of flesh that were being cooked, that savour which your gods agree to have assigned to them as their perquisite, assails the Titans with his thunderbolt, and consigns the members of Dionysus to his son Apollo to be interred. And he, for he did not disobey Zeus, bore the dismembered corpse to Parnassus, and there deposited it. If you wish to inspect the orgies of the Corybantes, then know that, having killed their third brother, they covered the head of the dead body with a purple cloth, crowned it, and carrying it on the point of a spear, buried it under the roots of Olympus. These mysteries are, in short, murders and funerals. And the priests of these rites, who are called kings of the sacred rites by those whose business it is to name them, give additional strangeness to the tragic occurrence by forbidding parsley with the roots from being placed on the table, for they think that parsley grew from the corybantic blood that flowed forth, just as the women, in celebrating the thesmophoria, abstain from eating the seeds of the pomegranate which have fallen on the ground, from the idea that pomegranates sprang from the drops of the blood of Dionysus. Those Corybantes also they call Kabiric, and the ceremony itself they announce as the Kabiric mystery. For those two identical fratricides, having abstracted the box in which the phallus of Bacchus was deposited, took it to Etruria, dealers in honorable wares truly. They lived there as exiles, employing themselves in communicating the precious teaching of their superstition and presenting phallic symbols and the box for the Tyrrhenians to worship. And some will have it, not improbably, that for this reason Dionysus was called Attis, because he was mutilated. And what is surprising at the Tyrrhenians, who were barbarians, being thus initiated into these foul indignities, when among the Athenians, and in the whole of Greece, I blush to say it, the shameful legend about Demeter holds its ground. For Demeter, wandering in quest of her daughter Kore, broke down with fatigue near Eleusis, a place in Attica, and sat down on a well overwhelmed with grief. This is even now prohibited to those who are initiated, lest they should appear to mimic the weeping goddess. The indigenous inhabitants then occupied Eleusis. Their names were Baubo and Deusoles and Triptolemus, and besides Eumolpus and Eubuleus. Triptolemus was a herdsman, Eumolpus a shepherd, and Eubuleus a swineherd, from whom came the race of the Eumolpidae and that of the heralds, a race of hierophants, who flourished at Athens. Well then, for I shall not refrain from the recital, Baubo, having received Demeter hospitably, reaches to her a refreshing draught, and on her refusing it, not having any inclination to drink, for she was very sad, and Baubo, having become annoyed, thinking herself slighted, uncovered her shame, and exhibited her nudity to the goddess. Demeter is delighted at the sight, and takes, though with difficulty, the draught. Pleased, I repeat, at the spectacle. These are the secret mysteries of the Athenians, these Orpheus records. I shall produce the very words of Orpheus, that you may have the great authority on the mysteries himself, as evidence for this piece of turpitude. Having thus spoken, she drew aside her garments, and showed all that shape of the body which it is improper to name, and with her own hand, Baubo stripped herself under the breasts. Blandly then, the goddess laughed and laughed in her mind, and received the glancing cup in which was the draught. And the following is the token of the Eleusinian mysteries. I have fasted, I have drunk the cup, I have received from the box. Having done, I put it into the basket, and out of the basket into the chest. Fine sights truly, and becoming a goddess. Mysteries worthy of the night and flame, and the magnanimous or rather silly people of the Erychthidae and the other Greeks besides, whom a fate they hope not for awaits after death. And in truth against these Heraclitus, the Ephesian prophecies, as the Nightwalkers, the Magi, the Bacchanals, the Lenen revelers, the initiated. These he threatens with what will follow death, and predicts for them fire. For what are regarded among men as mysteries, they celebrate sacrilegiously. Law, then, and opinion are nugatory, and the mysteries of the dragon are an imposture, which celebrates religiously mysteries that are no mysteries at all, and observes with a spurious piety profane rites. What are these mystic chests? For I must expose their sacred things, and divulge things not fit for speech. Are they not sesame cakes and pyramidal cakes, and globular and flat cakes embossed all over, and lumps of salt, and a serpent the symbol of Dionysus Bassareus? And besides these, are they not pomegranates and branches and rods and ivy leaves? And besides, round cakes and poppy seeds? And further, there are the unmentionable symbols of Themis, marjoram, a lamp, a sword, a woman's comb, which is a euphemism and mystic expression for the muliebria. O unblushing shamelessness! Once on a time night was silent, a veil for the pleasure of temperate men. But now for the initiated, the holy night is the telltale of the rites of licentiousness, and the glare of torches reveals vicious indulgences. Quench the flame, O Hierophant! Reverence, O torch-bearer, the torches. That light exposes Iacchus. Let your mysteries be honored, and command the orgies to be hidden in night and darkness. The fire dissembles not, it exposes and punishes what it is bidden. Such are the mysteries of the atheists, and with reason I call those atheists who know not the true God, and pay shameless worship to a boy torn in pieces by the Titans, and a woman in distress, and to parts of the body that in truth cannot be mentioned for shame, held fast as they are in the double impiety. First, in that they know not God, not acknowledging as God him who truly is. The other and second is the error of regarding those who exist not as existing and calling those gods that have no real existence, or rather no existence at all, who have nothing but a name. Wherefore the apostle reproves us, saying, And you were strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. All honor to that king of the Scythians, whoever Anacharsis was, who shot with an arrow one of his subjects, who imitated among the Scythians the mystery of the mother of the gods, as practiced by the inhabitants of Cyzicus, beating a drum and sounding a cymbal strung from his neck like a priest of Cybele, condemning him as having become effeminate among the Greeks, and a teacher of the disease of effeminacy to the rest of the Scythians. Wherefore, for I must by no means conceal it, I cannot help wondering how Euhemerus of Agrigento, and Nicanor of Cyprus, and Diagoras, and Hippo of Melos, and besides these, that Cyrenian of the name of Theodorus, and numbers of others who lived a sober life and had a clearer insight than the rest of the world into the prevailing error respecting those gods, were called atheists. For if they did not arrive at the knowledge of the truth, they certainly suspected the error of the common opinion, which suspicion is no insignificant seed and becomes the germ of true wisdom. One of these charges the Egyptians thus: If you believe them to be gods, do not mourn or bewail them, and if you mourn and bewail them, do not any more regard them as gods. And another, taking an image of Hercules made of wood, for he happened most likely to be cooking something at home, said, Come now, Hercules, now is the time to undergo for us this 13th labor, as you did the 12 for Eurystheus, and make this ready for Diagoras, and so cast it into the fire as a log of wood. For the extremes of ignorance are atheism and superstition, from which we must endeavor to keep. And do you not see Moses, the hierophant of the truth, enjoining that no eunuch or emasculated man or son of a harlot should enter the congregation? By the two first, he alludes to the impious custom by which men were deprived both of divine energy and of their virility, and by the third, to him who, in place of the only real God, assumes many gods falsely so called, as the son of a harlot, in ignorance of his true father, may claim many putative fathers. There was an innate original communion between men and heaven, obscured through ignorance, but which now at length has leapt forth instantaneously from the darkness, and shines resplendent, as has been expressed by one in the following lines: See this lofty, this boundless ether, holding the earth in the embrace of its humid arms. And in these, O you who makes the earth your chariot, and in the earth hast your seat, whoever you be, baffling our efforts to behold you, and whatever else the sons of the poets sing, but sentiments erroneous and deviating from what is right and certainly pernicious have turned man, a creature of heavenly origin, away from the heavenly life and stretched him on the earth by inducing him to cleave to earthly objects. For some, beguiled by the contemplation of the heavens and trusting to their sight alone, while they looked on the motions of the stars, straightway were seized with admiration and deified them, calling the stars gods from their motion, theos from thein, and worshipped the sun, as for example the Indians, and the moon as the Phrygians. Others, plucking the benignant fruits of earth-born plants called grain Demeter, as the Athenians, and the vine Dionysus, as the Thebans. Others, considering the penalties of wickedness, deified them, worshipping various forms of retribution and calamity. Hence the Erinyes and the Eumenides and the deities which require atonement, and the judges and avengers of crime, are the creations of the tragic poets. And some even of the philosophers, after the poets, make idols of forms of the affections in your breasts, such as fear and love and joy and hope, as to be sure Epimenides of old, who raised at Athens the altars of insult and impudence. Other objects deified by men take their rise from events, and are fashioned in bodily shape, such as a dike, a clotho, and lachesis, and Atropos, and Hymamena, and Auxo, and Thallo, which are Attic goddesses. There is a sixth mode of introducing error and of manufacturing gods, according to which they number the 12 gods, whose birth is the theme of which Hesiod sings in his Theogony, and of whom Homer speaks in all that he says of the gods. The last mode remains, for there are 7 in all, that which takes its rise from the divine beneficence towards men. For not understanding that it is God that does us good, they have invented saviors in the persons of the Dioscuri, and Hercules the averter of evil, and Asclepius the healer. These are the slippery and hurtful deviations from the truth which draw man down from heaven and cast him into the abyss. I wish to show thoroughly what like these gods of yours are, that now at length you may abandon your delusion and speed your flight back to heaven. For we also were once children of wrath, even as others. But God, being rich in mercy, for the great love wherewith he loved us, when we were now dead in trespasses, quickened us together with Christ. For the Word is living, and having been buried with Christ, is exalted with God. But those who are still unbelieving are called children of wrath, reared for wrath. We who have been rescued from error and restored to the truth are no longer the nurslings of wrath. Thus, therefore, we who were once the children of lawlessness have through the philanthropy of the Word now become the sons of God. But to you, a poet of your own, Empedocles of Agrigento, comes and says, "Wherefore, distracted with grievous evils, you will never ease your soul of its miserable woes. The most of what is told of your gods is fabled and invented, and those things which are supposed to have taken place are recorded of vile men who lived licentious lives. You walk in pride and madness, and leaving the right and straight path, you have gone away through thorns and briars. Why do you wander? Cease, foolish men, from mortals. Leave the darkness of night, and lay hold of the light." These counsels the Sibyl, who is at once prophetic and poetic, enjoins on us, and truth enjoins them on us too, stripping the crowd of deities of those terrifying and threatening masks of theirs, disproving the rash opinions formed of them by showing the similarity of names. For there are those who reckon 3 Jupiters, him of Ether in Arcadia, and the other 2 sons of Kronos, and of these 1 in Crete, and the others again in Arcadia. And there are those that reckon 5 Athenes, the Athenian, the daughter of Hephaestus, the second, the Egyptian, the daughter of Nilus, the third, the inventor of war, the daughter of Kronos, the fourth, the daughter of Zeus, whom the Messenians have named Coryphasia, from her mother. Above all, the daughter of Pallas and Titanis, the daughter of Oceanus, who, having wickedly killed her father, adorned herself with her father's skin, as if it had been the fleece of a sheep. Further, Aristotle calls the first Apollo the son of Hephaestus and Athene. Consequently, Athene is no more a virgin. The second, that in Crete, the son of Corybas, the third, the son Zeus, the fourth, the Arcadian, the son of Silenus. This one is called by the Arcadians Nomius, and in addition to these, he specifies the Libyan Apollo, the son of Ammon, and to these, Didymus, the grammarian, adds a sixth, the son of Magnus. And now how many Apollos are there? They are numberless mortal men, all helpers of their fellow men, who similarly with those already mentioned have been so called. And what were I to mention the many Asclepiuses, or all the Mercuries that are reckoned up, or the Vulcans of fable? Shall I not appear extravagant, deluging your ears with these numerous names? At any rate, the native countries of your gods, and their arts and lives, and besides especially their sepulchres, demonstrate them to have been men. Mars, accordingly, who by the poets is held in the highest possible honor. Mars, Mars, bane of men, blood-stained stormer of walls. This deity, always changing sides and implacable, as Epicharmus says, was a Spartan. Sophocles knew him for a Thracian. Others say he was an Arcadian. This god, Homer says, was bound 13 months. Mars had his suffering. By Aloeus' sons, Otus and Ephialtes, strongly bound, he 13 months in brazen fetters lay. Good luck attend the Carians, who sacrifice dogs to him. And may the Scythians never leave off sacrificing asses, as Apollodorus and Callimachus relate. Phobos rises propitious to the Hyperboreans, then they offer sacrifices of asses to him, and the same in another place. Fat sacrifices of asses' flesh delight Phobos. Hephaestus, whom Jupiter cast from Olympus, from its divine threshold, having fallen on Lemnos, practiced the art of working in brass, maimed in his feet. His tottering knees were bowed beneath his weight. You have also a doctor, and not only a brass worker among the gods. And the doctor was greedy of gold. Asclepius was his name. I shall produce as a witness your own poet, the Boeotian Pindar. Him even the gold glittering in his hands, amounting to a splendid fee, persuaded to rescue a man already death's capture from his grasp. But Saturnian Jove, having shot his bolt through both, quickly took the breath from their breasts, and his flaming thunderbolt sealed their doom. And Euripides, for Zeus was guilty of the murder of my son Asclepius by casting the lightning flame at his breast. He therefore lies struck with lightning in the regions of Cynosuris. Philochorus also says that Poseidon was worshipped as a physician in Tanos, and that Kronos settled in Sicily and there was buried. Patroclus the Thurian and Sophocles the Younger in 3 tragedies have told the story of the Dioscuri, and these Dioscuri were only 2 mortals, if Homer is worthy of credit. But they beneath the teeming earth in Lacedaemon lay, their native land. And in addition, he who wrote the Cyprian poem says Castor was mortal, and death was decreed to him by fate, but Pollux was immortal, being the progeny of Mars. This he has poetically fabled. But Homer is more worthy of credit, who spoke as above of both the Dioscuri, and besides proved Heracles to be a mere phantom. The man Hercules, expert in mighty deeds. Hercules, therefore, was known by Homer himself as only a mortal man, and Hieronymus the philosopher describes the make of his body as tall, bristling-haired, robust, and Dicarchus says that he was square-built, muscular, dark, hook-nosed, with greyish eyes and long hair. This Hercules, accordingly, after living 52 years, came to his end and was burned in a funeral pyre in Uta. As for the Muses, whom Alcander calls the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, and the rest of the poets and authors deify and worship, those Muses, in honor of whom whole states have already erected museums, being handmaids, were hired by Megaclo, the daughter of Macar. This Macar reigned over the lesbians and was always quarreling with his wife, and Megaclo was vexed for her mother's sake. What would she not do on her account? Accordingly, she hires those handmaids, being so many in number, and calls them Mise, according to the dialect of the Aeolians. These she taught to sing deeds of the olden time and play melodiously on the lyre. And they, by assiduously playing the lyre and singing sweetly to it, soothed Makar and put a stop to his ill temper. Wherefore Megaclo, as a token of gratitude to them, on her mother's account erected brazen pillars and ordered them to be held in honor in all the temples. Such, then, are the Muses. This account is in Merciless of Lesbos. And now, then, hear the loves of your gods, and the incredible tales of their licentiousness, and their wounds, and their bonds, and their laughing, and their fights, their servitudes too, and their banquets. And furthermore, their embraces and tears and sufferings and lewd delights. Call me Poseidon, and the troop of damsels deflowered by him, Amphitrite, Amymone, Alope, Melanippe, Alcyone, Hippotho, Chione, and myriads of others, with whom, though so many, the passions of your Poseidon were not satiated. Call me Apollo. This is Phoebus, both a holy prophet and a good adviser. But Sterope will not say that, nor Ithausa, nor Arsinoe, nor Zeuxippe, nor Protho, nor Marpissa, nor Hypsipyle. For Daphne alone escaped the profit and seduction, and above all, let the Father of gods and men, according to you, himself come, who was so given to sexual pleasure as to lust after all, and indulge his lust on all, like the goats of the Thmuite. And your poems, O Homer, fill me with admiration, he said, and nodded with his shadowy brows, waved on the immortal head the ambrosial locks, and all Olympus trembled at his nod. You make Zeus venerable, O Homer, and the nod which you ascribe to him is most reverend, but show him only a woman's girdle, and Zeus is exposed, and his locks are dishonored. To what a pitch of licentiousness did that Zeus of yours proceed, who spent so many nights in voluptuousness with Alcmene? For not even these 9 nights were long to this insatiable monster, but on the contrary, a whole lifetime was short enough for his lust, that he might beget for us the evil-averting god. Hercules, the son of Zeus, a true son of Zeus, was the offspring of that long night, who with hard toil accomplished the 12 labors in a long time, but in one night deflowered the 50 daughters of Thestius, and thus was at once the debaucher and the bridegroom of so many virgins. It is not, then, without reason that the poets call him a cruel wretch and a nefarious scoundrel. It were tedious to recount his adulteries of all sorts and debauching of boys, for your gods did not even abstain from boys, one having loved Hylas, another Hyacinthus, another Pelops, another Chrysippus, and another Ganymede. Let such gods as these be worshipped by your wives, and let them pray that their husbands be such as these, so temperate that, emulating them in the same practices, they may be like the gods. Such gods let your boys be trained to worship, that they may grow up to be men with the accursed likeness of fornication on them received from the gods. But it is only the male deities, perhaps, that are impetuous in sexual indulgence. The female deities stayed each in the house for shame, says Homer, the goddesses blushing for modesty's sake to look on Aphrodite when she had been guilty of adultery. But these are more passionately licentious, bound in the chains of adultery. Eos having disgraced herself with Tithonus, Selene with Endymion, Nereus with Iacchus, Thetis with Peleus, Demeter with Jason, Persephata with Adonis, and Aphrodite, having disgraced herself with Ares, crossed over to Cinera and married Anchises, and laid snares for Phaethon, and loved Adonis. She contended with the ox-eyed Juno, and the goddesses unrobed for the sake of the apple, and presented themselves naked before the shepherd, that he might decide which was the fairest. But come, let us briefly go the round of the games, and do away with those solemn assemblages at tombs, the Isthmian, Nemean, and Pythian, and finally the Olympian. At Pytho, the Pythian dragon is worshipped, and the festival assemblage of the serpent is called by the name Pythia. At the Isthmus, the seas spit out a piece of miserable refuse, and the Isthmian games bewail Melicerta. At Nemea, another, a little boy, Archemorus, was buried, and the funeral games of the child are called Nemea. Pisa is the grave of the Phrygian charioteer, O Hellenes of all tribes, and the Olympian games, which are nothing else than the funeral sacrifices of Pelops, the Zeus of Phidias, claims for himself. The mysteries were then, as is probable, games held in honor of the dead. So also were the oracles, and both became public. But the mysteries at Sagra and in Alimus of Attica were confined to Athens. But those contests and phalloi consecrated to Dionysus were a world's shame, pervading life with their deadly influence. For Dionysus, eagerly desiring to descend to Hades, did not know the way. A man, by name Prosimnus, offers to tell him, not without reward. The reward was a disgraceful one, though not so in the opinion of Dionysus. It was an Aphrodisian favor that was asked of Dionysus as a reward. The god was not reluctant to grant the request made to him, and promises to fulfill it should he return, and confirms his promise with an oath. Having learned the way, he departed and again returned. He did not find Prosimnus, for he had died. In order to acquit himself of his promise to his lover, he rushes to his tomb and burns with unnatural lust. Cutting a fig branch that came to his hand, he shaped the phallus, and so performed his promise to the dead man. As a mystic memorial of this incident, phalloi are raised aloft in honor of Dionysus through the various cities. For did they not make a procession in honor of Dionysus and sing most shameless songs in honor of the Pudenda, all would go wrong, says Heraclitus. This is that Pluto and Dionysus in whose honor they give themselves up to frenzy and play the bacchanal, not so much in my opinion for the sake of intoxication as for the sake of the shameless ceremonial practiced. With reason, therefore, such as have become slaves of their passions are your gods. Furthermore, like the Helots among the Lacedaemonians, Apollo came under the yoke of slavery to Admetus in Phere, Hercules to Omphale in Sardis. Poseidon was a drudge to Laomedon, and so was Apollo, who, like a good-for-nothing servant, was unable to obtain his freedom from his former master. And at that time the walls of Troy were built by them for the Phrygian. And Homer is not ashamed to speak of Athene as appearing to Ulysses with a golden lamp in her hand. And we read of Aphrodite, like a wanton serving wench, taking and setting a seat for Helen opposite the adulterer in order to entice him. Panyasis too tells us of gods in plenty, besides those who acted as servants, writing thus: Demeter underwent servitude, and so did the famous lame god. Poseidon underwent it, and Apollo too, of the silver bow, with a mortal man for a year, and fierce Mars underwent it at the compulsion of his father, and so on. Agreeably to this, it remains for me to bring before you those amatory and sensuous deities of yours, as in every respect having human feelings. For theirs was a mortal body. This Homer most distinctly shows by introducing Aphrodite uttering loud and shrill cries on account of her wound, and describing the most warlike Ares himself as wounded in the stomach by Diomede. Polemo, too, says that Athene was wounded by Ornytus. Nay, Homer says that Pluto even was struck with an arrow by Hercules, and Panyasis relates that the beams of Saul were struck by the arrows of Hercules, and the same Panyasis relates that by the same Hercules Hera, the goddess of marriage, was wounded in sandy Pylos. Sosibius too relates that Hercules was wounded in the hand by the sons of Hippocoon, and if there are wounds, there is blood. For the ichor of the poets is more repulsive than blood, for the putrefaction of blood is called ichor. Wherefore cures and means of sustenance of which they stand in need must be furnished. Accordingly, mention is made of tables and potations and laughter and intercourse, for men would not devote themselves to love or beget children or sleep if they were immortal and had no wants and never grew old. Jupiter himself, when the of Lycaon the Arcadian, partook of a human table among the Ethiopians, a table rather inhuman and forbidden. For he satiated himself with human flesh unwittingly. For the god did not know that Lycaon the Arcadian, his entertainer, had slain his son, his name was Nyctimus, and served him up cooked before Zeus. This is Jupiter the good, the prophetic, the patron of hospitality, the protector of suppliants, the benign, the author of omens, the avenger of wrongs, rather the unjust, the violator of right and of law, the impious, the inhuman, the violent, the seducer, the adulterer, the amatory. But perhaps when he was such, he was a man. But now these fables seem to have grown old on our hands. Zeus is no longer a serpent, a swan, nor an eagle, nor a licentious man. The god no longer flies, nor loves boys, nor kisses, nor offers violence, although there are still many beautiful women, more comely than Leda, more blooming than Semele, and boys of better looks and manners than the Phrygian herdsman. Where is now that eagle? Where now that swan? Where now is Zeus himself? He has grown old with his feathers, for as yet he does not repent of his amatory exploits, nor is he taught continence. The fable is exposed before you. Leda is dead, the swan is dead. Seek your Jupiter, ransack not heaven, but earth. The Cretan, in whose country he was buried, will show him to you. I mean Callimachus in his hymns. For your tomb, O king, the Cretans fashioned. For Zeus is dead, be not distressed as Leda is dead, and the swan and the eagle and the libertine and the serpent. And now even the superstitious seem, although reluctantly yet truly, to have come to understand their error respecting the gods. For not from an ancient oak, nor from a rock, but from men is your descent. But shortly after this, they will be found to be but oaks and stones. One Agamemnon is said by Staphylos to be worshipped as a Jupiter in Sparta, and Phanocles, in his book of the Brave and Fair, relates that Agamemnon, king of the Hellenes, erected the temple of Argenian Aphrodite in honor of Argenis his friend. And Artemis, named the Strangled, is worshipped by the Arcadians, as Callimachus says in his book of Causes. And at Methymna, another Artemis had divine honors paid her, viz. Artemis Condylitis. There is also the temple of another Artemis, Artemis Podagra, or the Gout, in Laconica, as Sosibius says. Polemo tells of an image of a yawning Apollo, and again of another image, reverenced in Elis, of the guzzling Apollo. Then the Eleans sacrificed to Zeus, the averter of flies, and the Romans sacrificed to Hercules, the averter of flies, and to Fever, and to Terror, whom also they reckon among the attendants of Hercules. I pass over the Argives, who worshipped Aphrodite, opener of graves. The Argives and Spartans reverence Artemis Chelitis, or the coffer, from Kelitene, which in their speech signifies to cough. Do you imagine from what source these details have been quoted? Only such as are furnished by yourselves are here adduced, and you do not seem to recognize your own writers, whom I call as witnesses against your unbelief. Poor wretches that you are, who have filled with unholy jesting the whole compass of your life, a life in reality devoid of life. Is not Zeus the bald head worshipped in Argos, and another Zeus, the avenger, in Cyprus? Do not the Argives sacrifice to Aphrodite Peribasso, the protectress, and the Athenians to Aphrodite Hetera, the courtesan, and the Syracusans to Aphrodite Callipygos, whom Nicander has somewhere called Calliglutos, with beautiful rump? I pass over in silence just now Dionysus Quairopsales. The Sicyonians reverence this deity, whom they have constituted the god of the Muliebria, the patron of filthiness, and religiously honor as the author of licentiousness. Such, then, are their gods. Such are they also who make mockery of the gods, or rather mock and insult themselves. How much better are the Egyptians, who in their towns and villages pay divine honors to the irrational creatures, than the Greeks, who worship such gods as these. For if they are beasts, they are not adulterous or libidinous, and seek pleasure in nothing that is contrary to nature. And of what sort these deities are, what need is there further to say, as they have been already sufficiently exposed? Furthermore, the Egyptians whom I have now mentioned are divided in their objects of worship. The Sionites worship the braised fish, and the Maiotes, this is another fish, is worshipped by those who inhabit Elephantine. The Oxyrhynchites likewise worship a fish which takes its name from their country. Again, the Heraclitopolites worship the Ichneumon, the inhabitants of Sais and of Thebes a sheep, the Leucopolites a wolf, the Sinopolites a dog, the Memphites Apis, the Mendesians a goat. And you who are altogether better than the Egyptians, I shrink from saying worse, who never cease laughing every day of your lives at the Egyptians, what are some of you too with regard to brute beasts? For of your number the Thessalians pay divine homage to storks in accordance with ancient custom, and the Thebans to weasels for their assistance at the birth of Hercules. And again, are not the Thessalians reported to worship ants, since they have learned that Zeus, in the likeness of an ant, had intercourse with Eurymedusa, the daughter of Cletor, and begot Myrmidon? Polymo too relates that the people who inhabit the Troad worship the mice of the country, which they call Sminthoi, because they gnawed the strings of their enemies' bows, and from those mice Apollo has received his epithet of Sminthian. Heraclides, in his work regarding the building of temples in Acarnania, says that, at the place where the promontory of Actium is, and the temple of Apollo of Actium, they offer to the flies the sacrifice of an ox. Nor shall I forget the Samians. The Samians, as Euphorion says, reverence the sheep. Nor shall I forget the Syrians, who inhabit Phoenicia, of whom some revere doves and others fishes, with as excessive veneration as the Eleans do Zeus. Well then, since those you worship are not gods, it seems to me requisite to ascertain if those are really demons who are ranked, as you say, in this second order next to the gods. For if the licorice and impure are demons, indigenous demons who have obtained sacred honors may be discovered in crowds throughout your cities. Menedemus among the Scythians, among the Tenians, Callistagoras, among the Delians, Annius, among the Laconians, Astrabacus. At Phalaris, a hero affixed to the prow of ships is worshipped, and the Pythian priestess enjoined the Plataeans to sacrifice to Androcrates and Democritus, and Cyclaeus and Leuco, while the Median War was at its height. Other demons in plenty may be brought to light by anyone who can look about him a little. For thrice 10,000 are there in the all-nourishing earth of demons immortal, the guardians of articulate speaking men. Who these guardians are do not grudge, O Boeotian, to tell. Is it not clear that they are those we have mentioned, and those of more renown, the great demons, Apollo, Artemis, Leto, Demeter, Kor, Pluto, Hercules, and Zeus himself? But it is from running away that they guard us, O Ascraean. Or perhaps it is from sinning, as forsooth they have never tried their hand at sin themselves. In that case, verily, the proverb may fitly be uttered. The father who took no admonition admonishes his son. If these are our guardians, it is not because they have any ardor of kindly feeling towards us, but intent on your ruin. After the manner of flatterers, they prey on your substance, enticed by the smoke. These demons themselves indeed confess their own gluttony, saying, "For with drink offerings due and fat of lambs, my altar still has at their hands been fed, such honor has to us been ever paid." What other speech would they utter if indeed the gods of the Egyptians, such as cats and weasels, should receive the faculty of speech, than that Homeric and poetic one which proclaims their liking for savory odors and cookery? Such are your demons and gods, and demigods, if there are any so called, as there are demi-asses, mules. For you have no want of terms to make up compound names of impiety.